was doing all the performances, I was actually singing out live in the microphone on top of Michael's track. So it's a blend of my vocal and Michael's, however they edited, both of my vocal and Michael's together. But even, the moments where there's no backing track, it's actually me singing, the acapellas, which was really fun to do.
When Jaafar Jackson was chosen to portray his uncle Michael, people immediately noticed the resemblance. But then, they heard him sing. The tone, the delivery, and even certain vocal mannerisms sounded so familiar that some fans had to listen twice. And once you hear these moments side by side, you'll understand why people are saying Jaafar Jackson sounds almost too much like the king of pop.
Have you seen my childhood? I'm searching for the one that I'd done. I forgot the lyrics, but I don't want to do too much.
Okay.
And that resemblance didn't suddenly appear when Jaafar was cast in the Michael Jackson biopic. Music had been around him practically his entire life. As the son of Jermaine Jackson, Jaafar grew up inside one of the most famous musical families in history, surrounded by people who understood singing, performing, and life on stage. But despite having the Jackson name, becoming a performer wasn't automatically guaranteed. Jaafar still had to discover whether music was something he genuinely wanted to pursue himself. When he was younger, Jaafar experimented with other interests, including golf, but music kept pulling him back. By around the age of 12, he was already spending time at the piano, learning chords by ear, and experimenting with his vocal range. Instead of simply relying on whatever natural talent he had inherited, he practiced repeatedly. Those early sessions helped him understand his own voice, long before anyone imagined that he might one day be asked to recreate the voice and appearance of Michael Jackson.
It was a process that was almost 2 years of just the auditioning, and that's before I even knew I was really going to play him. Then after that, I had like another 1.5 years to really hone in on the little details and nuances and with that confidence knowing that I have the role. But the auditioning process was very, very challenging, but it really helped me to shape what I needed to before going into Michael.
Yeah, that's kind of cool, because by the time you do that, you feel way more comfortable and confident probably
Oh,
at that
absolutely.
point. Yeah. By the way, you have such a beautiful smile.
As Jaafar grew older, music gradually became more important in his life. The hours spent experimenting with melodies turned into more serious vocal exercises and musical development. He listened carefully to other singers, tested his range, and continued learning how to control his voice. By his teenage years, performing was no longer simply something happening around him because of his famous family. It was becoming something Jaafar wanted to pursue for himself. That became clearer in 2019 when Jaafar released his debut single, Got Me Singing. Rather than introducing himself by simply copying Michael's sound, the track gave Jaafar an opportunity to establish himself as an artist in his own right. Recording also taught him practical lessons about microphone technique, breathing, and the difference between a polished studio vocal and a live performance. At the time, those experiences were simply part of developing his own career, but they would later become incredibly useful. A few years later, filmmakers began searching for someone capable of portraying Michael Jackson, and the challenge was enormous. They didn't just need someone who could wear the costumes and recreate the moonwalk. Michael's movements, expressions, speaking voice, singing, and stage presence were recognizable around the world. Millions of fans had watched the same performances repeatedly for decades, meaning even tiny inaccuracies could immediately stand out. Whoever accepted the role would be compared directly with one of the most documented performers in history.
Speaking of transformations, I mean, how long did it take to nail? You have a very different speaking voice than your uncle. How long did it take to master that? It's very particular.
It was interesting because at first it was very silly to my own ears, when I was trying to do that. So I really read a lot of books in his voice, and each book I got better, basically. And you get more used to it. And sometimes I'd be out like in a grocery store and I'd be talking to someone, but I'd naturally respond, and I'm like, wait, that sounded kind of like Michael. Like, I wasn't trying to do it intentionally, so I wanted to get to that place where I wasn't thinking about it, like putting it on. It would just come out naturally. Yeah. And it took a lot of time.
It's very particular. Yeah, for sure.
Jaafar eventually stepped in front of a camera and auditioned for the role. Director Antoine Fuqua immediately had more than Jaafar's facial resemblance to consider. Small physical details apparently caught his attention too, including the way Jaafar naturally positioned and moved his hands while performing. These weren't necessarily things an actor could easily manufacture. They were subtle similarities that made Jaafar appear familiar even before elaborate costumes, makeup, choreography, or stage lighting were added. Eventually, Jaafar got the role, but being Michael Jackson's nephew wasn't going to be enough to carry an entire movie. Jaafar now had to transform that natural family resemblance into a complete performance. His preparation stretched across roughly 2 years and involved repeatedly studying footage of Michael. He wasn't interested only in famous poses or dance moves. He began breaking down the tiny details connecting those recognizable moments together.
What surprised me most, I would say, is I was allowed access to a lot of his personal notes, and I realized that he would do mantras, affirmations, and his belief in manifestation was incredible. I didn't realize that about him until I really dived into it. And he would write everything he wanted to achieve. He'd write it down, he would repeat it. He'd even meditate for 30 minutes and just look at those mantras and repeat it back to back. He put on mirrors, he put on the ceiling, so you can see it every day, and it really was like his pursuit to greatness. So I applied that same work ethic and that same belief with how I was preparing, going towards shooting, and it was very incredible just to see what those notes were saying.
Jaafar studied how Michael held a microphone, adjusted his jacket, positioned his body, and breathed between verses. He examined how Michael transitioned from one movement into another, instead of simply memorizing where each dance step began and ended. That distinction was important because Michael rarely appeared to be thinking about choreography on stage. His movements seemed instinctive, and Jaafar needed to reach a point where his own performance could create that same impression. But the biggest challenge may have been Michael's voice. Michael Jackson didn't simply have a recognizable singing tone. His voice contained countless small characteristics that made it immediately identifiable. His pronunciation, vibrato, breathing, vocal attacks, and phrasing were all part of the sound. Then there was his speaking voice, which could shift considerably depending on the situation. Jaafar needed to understand those details without turning his performance into an exaggerated impersonation.
What was it like when you got to see yourself dressed as Michael for the first time?
Wow, I remember that so vividly. I was in the Bad tour outfit, performing the Bad song, actually, and it was day one.
That was the first day?
That was the first day.
Oh my God.
Shooting that,
up here.
Yeah, we started on the highest level, and it was so demanding. I just remembered having so much built-up anticipation and excitement because I was rehearsing for a couple years.
Do you see this?
I was rehearsing for a couple years privately, a lot on my own, and then with Rich and Tone, who are the choreographers of Michael, but mainly on my own in the mirror. And I just couldn't wait to have a crowd or the film crew to do it in front of. So it was that built-up excitement for a long time. So when the time came...
You put it out on the stage.
Oh yeah, I left it all on the stage, absolutely.
Jaafar isolated Michael's speaking voice from old interviews and repeatedly listened to individual phrases. One example involved looping the phrase, "I love you, thank you," while studying Michael's delivery. Jaafar then reportedly practiced reading completely unrelated material in that same register, including newspaper articles, poetry, and pages from the movie script. The idea was to become comfortable enough with Michael's vocal placement that he could deliver new dialogue naturally instead of simply reproducing familiar quotes. His singing required a separate routine. Jaafar reportedly recorded a cappella takes and compared them with Michael's original recordings, paying attention to differences in details such as vibrato and the way Michael attacked certain notes. He wasn't simply trying to sing in a higher voice and hope audiences accepted it. The process involved repeatedly listening, comparing, adjusting, and recording again until those smaller characteristics became increasingly natural.
I don't remember a moment that you weren't Michael.
Well, I feel like by the time we met, I was definitely more in a flow state.
You were in the pocket.
In a way, yeah.
Okay.
I was getting closer and closer, but I always felt like I wasn't fully there. But for me, it was, there's definitely nerves in the very, very, very beginning, before I even attempted to try an acting class or attempted a dance move or any of that.
You didn't do any of that before.
No.
You were playing golf.
I was playing golf, I was playing other sports, I was doing music, I was producing, I was writing, I was singing, but nothing in film.
That process could become physically exhausting. There were reportedly mornings when Jaafar had worked his voice so hard that he could barely speak above a whisper. Instead of abandoning the process, he would rest his voice and then continue training. That detail helps explain why the finished resemblance can sound so surprising. Whatever natural vocal similarities existed between Jaafar and Michael were being combined with deliberate, repetitive training designed specifically to close the remaining gap. Then there was the dancing. And this was another area where simply being related to Michael offered no shortcut. Jaafar worked with Rich and Tone Talawega, choreographers who had direct experience working with Michael Jackson. That meant they understood details that someone studying concert footage alone might overlook. They could recognize when something merely looked similar and when a movement actually captured the timing, weight, and fluidity associated with Michael. And Jackie Jackson bursts into tears over Jaafar's transformation into brother Michael.
How proud are you of Jaafar?
Oh, I can't even explain. I wouldn't want it any other way. Just, he's made us all so proud. It's unexplainable. Such a surreal moment. Yeah.
Congratulations. Let me talk to this guy now. Thank you for coming over.
I couldn't believe it. I got so emotional because he became Michael on that screen and it brought tears to my eyes. I couldn't believe it. He's incredible. Where did you see it?
No, I saw it, and it is unbelievable. And you don't even think about that being Jaafar. You think of that being Michael.
Watching Michael, absolutely.
When you saw some of those moments of your life replayed on the screen, and it's been done before, but I don't think ever like this.
This one is just, they did such a great job. Antoine and Graham and Jaafar and the whole crew, just incredible crew. They did a wonderful job.
Jaafar repeatedly practiced routines until his feet blistered, then taped them and continued. At another point, his muscles reportedly seized during rehearsal, but he recovered and started again. The objective wasn't simply to memorize choreography for the camera. His instructors wanted the movements embedded deeply enough into his muscle memory that Jaafar no longer appeared to be consciously remembering what came next. That meant studying much more than Michael's most famous performances. Jaafar reportedly created an archive covering different periods of Michael's career, from Jackson 5 appearances through Motown 25 and later tours. This mattered because Michael's performance style evolved over decades. The young Michael performing with his brothers didn't move exactly like the superstar of the Bad era, and that Michael differed again from the performer audiences saw during Dangerous and History.
I never dreamed to be an actor or even thought of playing him, but I knew it was a calling. Embodying Michael, I really had to earn the role and prove to the filmmakers that I was capable of becoming Michael. Essentially, it was starting at the roots and finding that authenticity.
He took it to a level that none of us thought he could take it to.
That's part of the magic of Jaafar. He has the desire, like Michael, to be the best.
Jaafar even studied rehearsal footage where Michael made mistakes. A missed beat or imperfect spin might seem useless when preparing to portray one of history's greatest entertainers, but those moments revealed something important. They showed how Michael recovered, reacted, and moved when everything wasn't perfectly choreographed. Instead of studying only the legend audiences saw beneath stadium lights, Jaafar was trying to understand the human performer underneath it. And there was one advantage Jaafar possessed that no ordinary Michael Jackson tribute artist could ever reproduce: family memory. Michael wasn't simply a celebrity Jaafar had discovered through music videos and concert footage. He was his uncle. Jaafar grew up within the same family, surrounded by relatives who had known Michael before the fame became enormous. That gave his preparation an emotional and personal dimension that would be impossible for another actor to duplicate exactly. Michael's mother, Katherine Jackson, publicly supported Jaafar's casting, and according to the reports, her reaction to his transformation became particularly meaningful. She watched early footage and eventually told Jaafar that, for a moment, she had forgotten she was watching her grandson. Whether an audience believes an actor resembles Michael is one thing, but receiving that kind of reaction from Michael's own mother carries an entirely different emotional weight.
I was just talking to your Uncle Jackie, and he was talking about your performance, and he started to cry. The emotion that it brings out in your uncles and your other family members is amazing and beautiful. How does that make you feel?
It makes me emotional. I remember when they first saw the screen tests, I got a call from each one of them individually, and even my Uncle Tito, rest in peace to him, and I just remember them getting emotional on the phone, and I started to cry just hearing it from the words, because to me that's the truest and the highest compliment I can get as far as who I want to hear from, the people that knew him closest and And those are the, they're the ones I looked up to as a kid, and to hear how proud they are, how much support I have from them. And first and foremost, my grandmother. Who can be more proud? And that makes me the happiest I can possibly be.
His father, Jermaine, could also offer a perspective few acting coaches could provide. Jermaine hadn't simply studied Michael Jackson from old footage. He had performed alongside his brother during the Jackson 5 years. He watched Jaafar's rehearsal material and offered small adjustments involving details such as the tilt of his chin or the timing of a pause. The family's involvement, therefore, wasn't presented merely as emotional encouragement. It became another source of detailed feedback. All of that preparation eventually had to survive the pressure of an actual movie set. Performing a Michael Jackson routine once in rehearsal was one thing, but recreating it repeatedly for different camera angles was something else. Jaafar had to maintain the same energy, expressions, timing, and physical precision through multiple takes. Some sequences demanded repeated filming over several days, placing even more strain on a performance that was already physically demanding. Then came one of the biggest questions surrounding Jaafar's casting. Would audiences actually hear him singing? Jaafar sang during concert sequences, with his vocals blended with Michael's original tracks. For certain studio moments, however, Jaafar's voice was used more directly. That approach allowed Michael's unmistakable original recordings to remain part of the musical performances, while still giving Jaafar room to contribute his own vocals.
I wanted that. I wanted to be challenged and find out new things about my own self and express that, especially through Michael, and learning about his life, the meaning behind the songs and the moves. And that was the challenging part, is really embodying the movement. And it took a lot of time, but for me, it was so insightful and such an incredible experience for me to embody that.
And that brings everything back to why Jaafar Jackson can sound so surprisingly similar to Michael. There probably isn't one single explanation. Some of the resemblance may naturally come from being part of the same family. Certain qualities of tone, facial structure, expression, and physical behavior can obviously appear among relatives. But genetics alone doesn't explain the amount of preparation required. Jaafar spent years developing musical skills before being cast, then devoted an intensive period specifically to understanding Michael. He studied how his uncle spoke, sang, breathed, moved, held a microphone, adjusted his clothing, and transitioned between steps. He listened to polished recordings, but also examined rehearsals and imperfect moments. Instead of learning a collection of recognizable Michael Jackson tricks, he attempted to understand the patterns connecting all of them.
What were you doing in that 2 years dedicating yourself to the role?
So many different things. It started really with collecting as much footage as I could of Michael, as much audio I could find of him speaking in interviews, or really for me, I wanted to find the moments that he wasn't aware he was on camera, to really get those really, candid moments where how he would behave, how he would speak, or even him eating, little nuanced things I tried to find as much as I could.
That is what separates Jaafar's transformation from an ordinary impersonation. Plenty of Michael Jackson tribute artists can recreate the military jackets, fedora, glove, moonwalk, spins, and famous poses. Some can even reproduce Michael's vocal mannerisms extremely well. But Jaafar began with something none of them could acquire through practice. He was already part of Michael Jackson's family and had grown up surrounded by the same musical legacy. And then, despite having that natural advantage, he practiced anyway. He trained his voice until it became exhausted, repeated dance routines until his feet blistered, studied decades of footage, and accepted detailed criticism from people who had actually known and worked with Michael. Natural resemblance provided the foundation, but repetition appears to have been what transformed that resemblance into a performance.
And really immerse myself in watching it completely over and over again until it was just innate in my mind. And then I kind of put that away and just allowed myself to be informed by the script and explore new things. And I had incredible coaches I was surrounded by. And also to be able to put that into action once I was on set, and to bounce off of Coleman and Nia was incredible. That energy on the set was, it was a learning experience every single day.
So when you hear one of those moments where Jaafar suddenly sounds almost exactly like Michael, it can feel genuinely strange. For a second, the tone, phrasing, or delivery can trigger the same recognition people have when hearing Michael himself. But behind those few seconds is a combination of family resemblance, musical experience, detailed observation, and an enormous amount of rehearsal. And after all that preparation, there are moments when the resemblance goes beyond something you can see. You can actually hear it.
So we broke down frame by frame the Billie Jean performance from Motown 25, and that was the first
set of choreography I started to learn throughout the process, and I had 20 days to kind of prove to them and the filmmakers that I can pull it off within those 20 days, even though in my mind I was like, 20 days? How can I do that? I need a lot more time, and within that time, I was very doubtful, and it was incredibly challenging. I can only imagine looking back at those videos now, and it's horrible.
You pulled it off. No, you pulled it off.
Compared to now, how it looks on the film is way different.
Oh yeah, than when you first started. I mean, let me
Yeah.
just show everybody. This is Michael Jackson in the Thriller video in 1983. This is Jaafar as Michael. During Thriller.
Thanks for watching, and make sure to check out our other videos on the screen.